Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is the game preview. Everton taking on Newcastle United tomorrow evening at Goodison Park. 7:30 p.m. kickoff, I believe it is, and another difficult task for Sean Dyche's Everton side. This time, not only having to overcome a side that currently sits sixth in the Premier League table, but also having to overcome what has been, I think it's fair to say, a difficult run at Goodison Park over the last few months or so. We spoke in the review to the Nottingham Forest game about how prior to the points deduction news, Everton had actually started to pick themselves up slightly at home. We'd beaten Bournemouth in the Premier League really comfortably. We'd beaten Burnley in the Cup really comfortably, and even the game against Brighton, although we only drew it, we deserved much more from that game and should have had two absolute blatant penalties in it as well, and with a much better side on the day, and completely nullified a really exciting Brighton side to very little. Obviously, we had the news of the points deduction and the first game back being Manchester United at the Goodison. Everybody hoped that it would go a certain way, and obviously we all know it didn't go that way, and the performance was very similar to some of those we've seen at Goodison Park this season. Some of the earlier performances against sides like Fulham, Wolves, Luton, games in which Everton have dominated in parts and created a plethora of opportunities, but unfortunately, A, not being able to score those opportunities, and B, made defensive mistakes that ultimately caused us to concede and lose the game. So hopefully we can turn that all around tomorrow and we can go out there and put in a similar performance to the ones that we've seen away from home this season, because the away performances have been absolutely outstanding. I said it on Monday and I'll say it again. I don't think I can ever remember Everton having this good of an away record. Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti's season in COVID is springs to mind, but certainly, not counting that one because it was, in front of no fans, and every away game was effectively a home game and vice versa because nobody was in the stadium to witness it. So discounting that season, I can't quite remember the last time that Everton had been this good away from home. In fact, I think the first time we'd won 3 away games on the bounce other than that season was in 2003, 2004. Sorry, the last time we'd won 3 games on a bounce, obviously prior to this season, not including Carlo Ancelotti's season, was 03-04. So, 20 odd years ago since we last had an away record where we were confident going away from home and beating sides that are in and around us. It's all now about replicating that at Goodison Park and being able to be confident going into games at Goodison Park against teams that we feel like we should be beating. And if we can do that, then, obviously not only will we be absolutely fine this season and with no threat of relegation, but we can start to build on that and look to climb further and further up the table. And, that home form and that home record, I think, is probably priority number one for Sean Dyche at the moment, because he knows how to play away from home. He knows the players understand the system. He knows the players understand the way in which he wants them to play away from home. He clearly understands the way in which we need to play away from home in order to pick up wins. But at Goodison, it's obviously a little bit different, and tomorrow evening presents another really difficult challenge, but one that Everton absolutely can get something out of. This Newcastle team, as I said, 6th in the league, 14 games played so far, 8 wins, 2 draws and 4 losses. Of course, currently sitting on 26 points, a point behind Tottenham, who are on 27, and 3 points behind Aston Villa, who obviously sit in the Champions League places. Newcastle are obviously in the Champions League this season. They had a good win against Manchester United last weekend. Obviously, Anthony Gordon being the goal scorer in that game. It'll certainly be interesting to see what sort of reception Anthony Gordon gets tomorrow at Goodison. I'm willing to bet it won't be a particularly warm one. However, I don't think it should be something that we pay particular too much attention to. I don't think the Anthony Gordon situation is one that requires much thought, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, because he was somebody that played for the football club, somebody that quite vocally didn't want to be at the football club, left for a massive price, a price at that time that was heavily inflated. He wasn't worth the money that they paid at that time. He's gone into Newcastle. He's obviously much more settled. He likes it a lot more down there. There's a lot less pressure, and now he's starting to show that he is a decent player and maybe worth that price tag that they paid. But I think that was a deal and a situation that pretty much worked for both clubs. Everton got an awful lot of money for a player that wasn't anywhere near what they paid for him at Everton, and Newcastle got somebody that they've obviously nurtured and worked with, Eddie Howe, and he's obviously made him a better player and made him probably worth that price tag now. So it worked all round, but obviously we know there'll be a lot of attention on him tomorrow. Boyhood, growing up in the Everton academy. I was going to say boyhood Everton fan then, but we know he's not. We know he's a boyhood cop-out, but somebody that was in and around the football club from a very young age and obviously left under a little bit of scrutiny and criticism recently. What's important tomorrow is we don't pay too much attention to that. I'm not saying don't boo him. I'm not saying don't get on his back if he's got a touch, because that could all work in our favour. But let's not put all of our energy into Anthony Gordon tomorrow, because it's important that we put all of our energy into these players and this team and getting this team another important 3 points. But as I said, they did beat Manchester United last time out. Obviously a draw with PSG in the Champions League this time last week. Beat Chelsea the week before in the Premier League 4-1, lost to Bournemouth 2-0 away from home, bit of a shock defeat for them. Obviously lost to Dortmund in the Champions League as well, beat Arsenal's only defeat this season coming against Newcastle, of course, beat Manchester United in the Cup, drew with Wolves, lost to Dortmund, beat Palace. Again, a pretty solid season for them so far, considering, obviously being in the Champions League and the group that they've got in the Champions League being Dortmund and I think Dortmund, AC Milan and PSG. To say that they sit sixth in the Premier League after 14 games and only 3 points behind the team in top four, I think is a pretty decent start of the season for them, and a pretty decent, obviously, opening first few months. And I think Eddie Howe probably deserves an awful lot of credit for that. I'm not Newcastle's biggest fan. I have very little time for Newcastle United because of previous I don't want to say rivalries, because there is no rivalry between Everton and Newcastle. I just don't particularly get along with a lot of their fans, and ultimately I'm not a massive fan of their football club, but I've got nothing particularly against them. Ultimately, yes, they've been taken over by a nation, and that ultimately means, success, as we've seen with Manchester City, PSG and other sides, but, ultimately they've got to do things in the right way, and they've got to employ the right people, and we at Everton Football Club have seen over the last few years how money isn't everything, and you've got to know what to do with it and know where to put it in order to make it a success. And Newcastle have done that. They brought some decent players in, players like Isaac, who's been absolutely fantastic for them, Bruno Gomes, of course, Livramento, we were watching the Champions League last week and was really, really impressive. Obviously they've got the likes of Nick Pope in there, Harvey Barnes in there, Anthony Gordon, who we've just spoken about, and they've brought a manager in Eddie Howe, who is a fantastic man manager, knows exactly what he's doing, and a director of football in Dan Ashworth, who is one of the very best in the business as well. So I've got no jealousy or particular hatred towards Newcastle United. I'm just not a big fan of them, but I'm not a big fan of any other Premier League football club as well. One thing that does massively benefit Everton going into tomorrow's game is Newcastle have got an absurd amount of injuries, it has to be said. In terms of key players out injured, we've just heard the news there that Nick Pope is set to have surgery on an injury that he sustained during last week, and that is set to keep him out for around 4 months. If you look at their current injury list as of the moment, they've obviously got Sandro Tonali, who is suspended because of the situation surrounding him, so he will be out. Nick Pope out with a shoulder injury, Jacob Murphy out, Dan Burn out. Probably the one that I am happiest about, not because he's out injured, I'm never happy to see a player out injured, but because he's unavailable for this game, is Callum Wilson, because Callum Wilson always scores against Everton Football Club for some reason. He's one of those players that every single time he's on the pitch, he puts the ball in the back of the net. So he's been ruled out. Elliot Anderson, Sean Longstaff, who's been a big player for them, Sven Botman, big player for them, Joe Willock, Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon, it says here, but apparently he's absolutely fine. Manquillo, Matt Target. So there's a number of first team players there that are unavailable for Newcastle tomorrow, which obviously boosts Everton's chances to ultimately go out there, and pick up what would be a huge win. I'm not saying that will be easy because of the injuries, because Newcastle have still got a plethora of top quality players in there that are available tomorrow that I'm sure will be there to ultimately to try and pick up a win for them. Players like Isaac, who we obviously saw last season at Goodison, was quite dominant in what was a really dominant Newcastle win. They've got Anthony Gordon there who'll have that sort of chip on his shoulder and bit in his teeth, and they've obviously got players like Bruno Gomes, who I think is a really good player. It'd be interesting to see who they play in goal. Given their two backup goalkeepers, obviously Dubravka, who obviously hasn't really played an awful lot recently, and then Loris Karius. It would be complete Everton, wouldn't it, if they put Karius in goal and he had the best game of his entire life and made 152 saves. But in reality, it's more than likely going to be Dubravka, because I think he is their number 2. But the ultimately the task for Everton, the task for Sean Dyche, the task for these players doesn't change. We've still got to go out there, and as I said at the start of the video, we've got to find a way of improving the home form. We've got to find a way of being able to go to Goodison Park and use Goodison Park to our advantage. What we've done really, really well of recent time, in my opinion, is we've used our away crowd, our away fans, our away support as a massive advantage. And I think over the last 3 or 4 away games, obviously Everton have won 3 on the spin, which is fantastic. But one thing that was really, really obvious in all of those games is every single time you watch Everton away from home, the Everton away support is, without a shadow of a doubt, the loudest in the stadium. No matter where we are, no matter who we're playing, no matter what team we're playing, you can always hear that Everton away section louder than you can hear the home section. And, you know, as somebody that has been part of that away section when Everton have won away from home, I can tell you now it's piercingly loud when you are a part of it, and I can only imagine how that sounds, you know, when you're watching from home and haven't watched from home a lot this season. You know, you obviously hear the away support and how good it is, and I think the players are using that to their advantage. Obviously, combined with the system and style that we play away from home, is a lot more sort of standoffish and hit teams on the counter attack and defend in numbers, and it's worked for us brilliantly. And what we've got to try and do now is replicate that at Goodison Park. Not necessarily replicate the way in which we play, because I'm not quite sure the way in which we play away from home would work at Goodison, but replicate, obviously, you know, being able to go out there with a plan. The players know what to do and the manager knows what he's doing, and obviously the fans will get behind that, because, you know, we've got a stadium there that we all absolutely love going to, that within the next 24 months won't be a thing, and we'll never be able to go to ever again, because obviously we'll have moved into the new stadium and Goodison will be transformed into a different area. So, you know, we absolutely need to utilise the Goodison atmosphere. We absolutely need to utilise and try and get back to what Goodison Park was 15 years ago, when teams hated going there. You know, I've been watching a few interviews with footballers recently, and it's really, really interesting, because you watch these interviews with some of the best footballers in the world, some of the, you know, most talented footballers in world football, and you ask them, you know, what stadiums didn't you like visiting? What stadiums were you a little bit worried about when you go? And a lot of them often reference Goodison Park. A lot of them often talk about Goodison Park as being a really, really difficult stadium to play. I just don't think modern footballers have those conversations. By top class footballers, I'm talking about, you know, players that have now retired, who were some of the best in the world 10 or 15 years ago, talking about Goodison as being a really difficult place to go to. Nowadays, I don't think that the better players would have those arguments or would have those conversations, because Goodison's atmosphere hasn't been what it needs to be for a long time, and there's very good reason for that. You know, it's very difficult for us to create an atmosphere when the football club has been through what it's been through over the last 4 or 5 years. It's incredibly difficult to get excited about anything in Everton at the moment. However, we need to, because not only do we need to pull these players out of the shit, again, this time it's through no fault of their own. So there can't be as much anger this time round. There can't be as much frustration. Even if we lose a game of football, the anger and the frustration has to be put on hold, because the reason Everton are in the position that we're in is through no fault of the players and through no fault of the manager. So that needs to be a reason for us to, as I said, build that atmosphere up and make Goodison that fortress that it once was. As I said, this will be incredibly difficult tomorrow, without a shadow of a doubt, because Newcastle are still, even with their injuries, they're still a really, really, really difficult team to play against. I mean, you know, the players that I've read out before as being injured, they've had a number of those players injured for at least a couple of weeks, and yet they've still beaten Manchester United, they've still beaten Chelsea comfortably, they've drew away in Paris, and again, they were unlucky in that game. They conceded the penalty in the last couple of minutes, and otherwise they've won. You know, they've obviously beaten Arsenal as well in that time. They've beaten Manchester United in the Cup. So they've had some big, big wins against some big teams and some big performances, even having 3 or 4 key players out injured. So it doesn't mean that this is going to be a walk in the park. The goalkeeper situation is one that I find really, 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 really interesting, because I am somebody who is of the view of that if you are playing an opposition team and they haven't got their first team goalkeeper in goal, and especially if it is the first game that the second choice or third choice or whoever it might be goalkeeper is playing. So for this instance, obviously Nick Pope was injured at the weekend. I think he went off with an injury at the weekend. Therefore, this will be the first game that Nick Pope doesn't play. So this will be the first game that Dubravka's in or Loris Karius is in. I think Dubravka could come off the bench at the weekend, so he's maybe played half an hour there. But I'm a big believer in absolutely throw everything at the opposition goalkeeper, because you could be playing against one of the best teams in the world. If their goalkeeper's their weakest link and you get an opportunity and you take it and it goes in the back of the net because their goalkeeper makes a mistake, and then you get another one 20 minutes later and you take it again, and all of a sudden you're 2-0 up, even if it's against the run of play and the opposition team have been the better team, once they're down 2-0, it all of a sudden becomes much more difficult for them. And the crowd, the home crowd, this in this case being Goodison, is bouncing, it's booming, it's up. So Everton need to target whoever it is in the Newcastle goal tomorrow, be it Karius, be it Dubravka. It needs to sort of be a shoot on sight policy, because these goalkeepers, A, are nowhere near the level as to what Nick Pope is, but B, also are relatively raw and have got a huge expectation on their shoulders now. They have to carry this football club, a football club who is fighting to finish in the top 4 places again, as well as fighting to play in the latter stages of the Champions League. They've got to carry them until at least, what the end, pretty much the end of the season. They project, Nick Pope will be out for 4 months, so that's what, March. You're coming towards the latter stages of the season. Then obviously they might go and buy a goalkeeper in January, but whoever is in goal between now and January will be thinking, right, not only do I have to carry this football club, but I've now got the pressure on me to impress, because if I don't impress, I'm going to get replaced in the January transfer window. So for me, I'd be taking any opportunity I can tomorrow. And I'm not saying shoot from 45 yards and waste an opportunity, but what I'm saying is, if Dwight McNeil or Jack Harrison or be it James Garner, if anybody has got the ball on sort of the edge of the box and a little bit of space opens up, have a shot. Why not? There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a goal from that area. And as I said, who knows, you might create an issue for the goalkeeper that has got a lot of pressure on him and is fairly raw at the moment. But yeah, as I said, this will be tough. Of course, it will be tough, and a win tomorrow would be absolutely huge for Everton. It would take us, obviously, within touch and distance of being out of the. In fact, it would take us out of the relegation zone at the moment. Sorry, I thought Luton were a couple of points better off than what they actually are. They're on 9 points, 15 games played. Obviously, they lost yesterday to Arsenal in pretty difficult circumstances for them. They were winning 3-2 with 10 minutes to go and ended up losing 4-3. So if Everton are to win tomorrow, bearing in mind Burnley have also played this week and they lost yesterday to Wolves, and Sheffield United, I think, play Liverpool today. So there's a high chance Sheffield United will also lose. It's an opportunity for Everton to climb out of that relegation zone and climb further towards, obviously, being back to where we were. And then the pressure is piled on Luton, it's piled on Burnley, and it's piled on Sheffield United again. So yeah, it will be tough, but the ultimately I think the motivation is clear. Not only is it to go out there and, as I said, and try and improve our home form, which we all know and will all agree needs improving, but it's also the motivation to go out there and put ourselves in a position where we're away from the relegation zone and we can look back and think, you know what, we're not going to put ourselves back there. And that's obviously only come a couple of weeks after the points deduction, which is ideal, really. We don't want to be in this position, where we're in and around the relegation zone in February, March time, even though it still wouldn't be our fault and it wouldn't be anything to do with the players or us. It's still not a nice situation to be in, is it? So, yeah, big opportunity tomorrow against a weakened Newcastle side, but still a very good Newcastle side that are more than capable of hurting us and still got incredibly talented players in there. So I don't expect this one to be easy. I expect the atmosphere to be absolutely booming. I expect Goodison Park to be rocking. It's a game under the lights, and it presents itself as an opportunity for us to get a big win against one of the top sides in the country in terms of league position, and also a team that, both fan bases generally have a little bit of, whether you want to call it rivalry, whether you want to call it banter, whatever you want to call it, there's definitely something there between the fans of Newcastle and the fans of Everton. So it's a big opportunity for us to go out there and put in a good performance and come away with what would be an absolutely huge result for the football club. Let's get in to our predicted starting 11, then brought to you, of course, as always, by FanHub. Get down in the description below, click the top link, go and download FanHub, give it a go. It's completely free, and it obviously helps the channel out massively if you could go and do that. You can do your predicted starting 11s, you can predict games, you can follow us over there at The Mighty Blues, and we'll get involved with everything. The more predictions you get right, the more points you're in, and you can exchange your points for things like clothing, for things like pints of beer in your local pub as well, which is absolutely fantastic. If you get enough points, then you can even maybe have a free night out after the game completely on FanHub. So go down there, check it out, give it a download. It helps the channel out massively as well. And yeah, let's get into our predicted starting 11. In goal, I am going to go Jordan Pickford. I know some people have fears around Jordan this fixture, because obviously of his relationship with Sunderland and his sort of relationship with Newcastle as well, in a very different way. Jordan's our number one. I trust him. I believe in him. I don't see any reason to take him out. Yes, he has to remain professional, and yes, this game maybe is a little bit more difficult for him than the the general game. Not that he would admit that, but ultimately he's our number one goalkeeper, and I've just spent 5 minutes talking about how Everton should target Newcastle's goalkeeper, because they'll be, a fresh sort of understudy who is under a lot of pressure, and there's absolutely no need for Everton to put ourselves in that position either. So, yeah, Jordan Pickford starts in goal. Left back, I'm going for Vitaly Mykolenko. Absolutely unbelievable again at the weekend against Nottingham Forest. This kid has been pretty much faultless for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. He'll have a difficult task tomorrow. Quite likely, to be up against Anthony Gordon on that Newcastle right-hand side. And Anthony Gordon is obviously somebody that Vitaly Mykolenko will not only know very well, but will also know has been in really, really good form recently, and somebody that definitely causes a threat and definitely causes a problem. So, big task for him tomorrow, but one that I definitely believe he can overcome, and one that I don't see him, well, hopefully he doesn't have much of a problem with, because, as I said, he's had to one-on-one defend against some of the best wingers in the world recently, and he's done an absolutely brilliant job at doing that. Next to him then, at the centre-back positioning, obviously James Tarkowski and Jared Brandtwaite. Again, I think this partnership has been pretty solid over the course of the last couple of months or so. It's made mistakes, it's had moments, it's had games where you sort of go, I'm not quite sure there, but ultimately, when you look at some of the other options on the bench, Michael Keane, no. Ben Godfrey, not great. There's no reason to split this partnership up. They've been fairly solid for the majority of the season. And as I said, at worst they've been average, at best they've been absolutely unbelievable. So, yeah, those two obviously in there. Brandtwaite, somebody that is improving week in, week out, and just getting better and better and better, isn't he? And at right back, I am going to go Ashley Young. Now, the reason for this is because I had a doubt in my mind whether the manager would choose Ashley Young for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because we play 3 games within the space of 7 days again. So obviously we played last Saturday, we play Thursday, and then we play Sunday. So realistically, is Ashley Young going to play 70, 80 minutes in all 3 of those games? I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure he's capable of doing that. However, the manager was asked about the fitness of players today. He was asked about the fitness of Amadou Onana. He was asked about the fitness of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and he was obviously asked about the fitness of Seamus Coleman, and he spoke about Amadou. He said Amadou is sort of touch and go. He's only just joined us on the grass, so whether or not he'll be ready, we'll wait and see. He spoke about Dom. He said Dom's there or thereabout. We've got to make a decision on him, but he's fit. And he spoke about Seamus Coleman, and he was really, really interestingly, he said about the right back position, we choose our players based upon not only them as individuals, but also how well they fit the team, and how well suited the team is with them in, and how well the team is doing with them in. So what I took from that, and I might be wrong, but what I took from that is the reason Ashley Young is playing is because the team are playing well, and the team are winning games, and the team are doing well with him in it. So why would I take him out? Now, obviously, we all see it as, well, when the team don't do well and when the team lose, often he is at fault for the goals we're conceding or the problems that are occurring. But I just think that sentence in itself, well, I choose the team not only based upon the players, wearing the shirt, but also how well the team is doing with certain players in. I think it just tells me that he's effectively saying Ashley Young is staying in the team. So maybe I'll be wrong, but I'm going to go with Ashley Young in there. Midfield 2, I am going to stick with, where are we? James Garner and Adrissa Garner Guy. I think Amadou Onana may make the bench. As I said, the manager said today that he is still touch and go. He's only just joined the team on the grass, so whether or not he will be available for tomorrow is still up for debate. So, as I said, at very, very best, I can see him making the bench. I don't think he'll start this game, and I've got no problem with that because I think Garner Gay and James Garner were absolutely fantastic against Nottingham Forest. And although this is a home game and it will be obviously different to the Forest game, it is also a home game against the side, towards the top of the table who are doing very well at the moment. So maybe the approach tomorrow will be more similar to an away game than what we've seen so far at Goodison Park. So we'll wait and see on that one, but I've got no problem with me midfield. Left side, I'm going to go with Dwight McNeil. Thought he had his best game of the season against Nottingham Forest in an Everton shirt. Thought he was absolutely fantastic. Obviously got the winning goal and was back to what he was towards the back end of last season, which obviously is always great to see because I think Dwight is a really, really important player for us and we need him to be at the top of his game effectively. We can't really have him performing as he's done so far this season. And like I said, he was absolutely fantastic on Saturday, and hopefully he can keep that up. Right hand side. Again, I'm going to go Jack Harrison. I'll be honest, I wouldn't have much of a problem if it was Danjuma, to be honest, because I don't think Jack Harrison or Danjuma have either particularly been massively impressive of late. I suppose Jack Harrison has been more impressive because he's played more. He obviously got the assist on Saturday as well, which he does deserve credit for. But as I said, I don't think he's been unbelievable, but I think he's probably done more than Danjuma has to stay in the team. Some people are disagree. Some people say he's been fantastic. I just expect more from him. And then in the 10, I'm going to go Abdoulaye Doucouré, and then up front, I'm going to go Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Beto, obviously, I'm not going to say had his chance and blew it because, as I said, in the review to the Forest game, I think Beto's somebody that we're going to have a lot of patience with and somebody that's going to take a lot of time to settle in and ultimately to be able to play at the level that we need him to play at. What I think it was distinctly clear on Saturday was Dominic Calvert-Lewin is our number 9. He is our first team striker, and Beto and Yusuf Chimiti and whoever else is behind him. So therefore, when Dominic Calvert-Lewin is fit, Dominic Calvert-Lewin will play, and the manager said that Dom is back, he's available, and it's just about the decision. And I think it will be, if he's fit and he's 100% and he's match fit and he's got no issue, I think it would be silly for the manager to not play Dominic Calvert-Lewin tomorrow. If he isn't, then obviously that's a different question. But yeah, I'm going to go with Dom in there. So there you go. Saved it. As I said, don't forget to go and check out FanHub in the description down below. Free to download. Follow us over there at The Mighty Blues, and we'll follow everybody back. Big thanks to FanHub for partnering us again. So there you go. That is the game preview. Let us know your thoughts on it in the comment section down below. Are you confident tomorrow? Are you not confident? Are you excited? Does it make you more confident that Newcastle have got a couple of players out? Or do you just think this will be a really, really difficult game? One thing is for sure is these are a really, really well-drilled, good side. So if we do lose this game tomorrow, I don't think it's the end of the world, but it is an opportunity for us to go out and pick up a big 3 points, and that would do the confidence wonders ahead of some really, really difficult games this month. So let's see what happens. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like. It does only take a second if you are new to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe as well. That would mean a huge amount to me. We will be back with the instant match reaction and the player ratings tomorrow, so look out for those. Until then, big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you after.